Oh man, I just deleted two videos that I thought were pretty decent. Uh, that is so frustrating, man. Mm. It is so frustrating. Oh, and I spilled all over my shirt. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about self-discipline on the path. And I did, and then I erased it. um, Self-discipline is a very useful thing. I can start out saying that. Useful thing on the path. Um, we live in a world, the world as it is a sort of garden of delights, can be, more and more is, that we've got access to in this modern day. Basically endless variety of external gratification in terms of food, sex, entertainment, substances, you name it, it's available. A very, you could say, good, in quotations, not actually good, but good time to be a hedonist. And yeah, and it's an external world that is built from a certain altitude of consciousness, you could say, as a reflection of, a reinforcement to, an amplification of our human nature, that we are addictable creatures, that addiction is sort of default in our society. But more than default, it's like we've figured out how to make an economy and a society run, hum, how to make an economy hum through exploitation of, through taking advantage of, interfacing with these dimensions of our humanity, that we seek pleasure on one level. Not all of that is negative, but because we're dealing with such large forces externally, they talk about the attention economy, for one example. if I'm using this correctly, the idea that, you know, we have a sophisticated enough, it doesn't even need to be that sophisticated to be honest, but a sophisticated enough understanding of human psychology that we can build that into our apps on our phones, on our devices, laptops, computers, on whatever platform, whatever website, you know, social media, etc. That we build these programs as a way of maximizing and capturing the most attention, because attention equals views, equals subscription, equals money from ad revenues, etc. So it's all about, you know, the captivation of human attention, and that we have become very adept at that. Yeah, and I mean, that's just one example, but you can see how it sort of takes advantage of these proclivities that we have. And in many ways, I don't want to speak absolutely, but in many ways, these unhealthy addictive patterns that we have, pain avoidance. It certainly maps on very cleanly to unhealthy patterns and can amplify it, because, you know, when you're in an avoidance state, when you've got unprocessed pain, and you've got the alluring, appealing possibility of pleasure, it's sort of a very easy mathematics, psychologically, emotionally, to run, that, you know, humans, we will take the route of less pain. Now, it's a very short-term strategy ultimately that only amplifies and deepens one's pain or inner division, lack of wholeness. Yeah, it's illusory ultimately. Because the pleasure is temporary, and there's always a refractory period to our addictions, that you get the hit, you get the relief, you get the peace, you get the feeling of relief, of release. Sex, alcohol, porn, relationship diversions, food, exercise, work, whatever the addictive strategy is, you get that relief from pain. But it's unstable. It's a temporary high. There's always a refractory period, a low, a trough. And those polarities, the highs and the lows, tend to amplify over time. Or at least the lows tend to get more and more low, and the highs become harder to attain. You know, just the addictive cycle. And so in a lifetime, you know, on the one hand, I said this in the video I just destroyed, god damn it, that there's an opportunity here that we have in this garden of delights, that the sort of hedonic software that we're running, or hardware, I don't know how you want to say that, our hedonic tendencies, it's like we're living in this kind of you just see how technology is kind of speeding up that process and optimizing that process ad absurdum. You know, like heroin was already such a just devastating drug, and then you've got fentanyl. Am I getting this right? Fentanyl is sort of the reductio ad absurdum of what was already just an overwhelming addictive substance. It's like the fentanylization. I think I've heard somebody say this before. I have. I just can't remember where. It's like the fentanylization of, you know, if it's with our food, just, you know, infusing. And this is starting to shift, I think. This one is perhaps not the best example, but yeah, with our food, just maximizing the caffeine, maximizing the sugar, maximizing whatever the additives are, the pleasure, the hit, the hedonic gratification, just ratcheting that up, turning that dial up, satiation dial up to 10. And that's just happening across, you know, as we figure out and optimize and maximize in the market. You know, in some sense, you could say like TikTok is sort of that same process, or, you know, these short videos. Yeah, it's just like taking that vulnerability, I guess, or that aspect of our psychology, of our attention, and just, you know, taking it to the extreme. Whereas maybe we're captivated by a moving picture. Back in the day, that would be a few hours long. You just see, now it's like, you know, these little 5-second, 10-second, 15-second hits. Porn, yeah, it's another example. Commodification of sex and intimacy, and just ratcheting up those dials, more extremes, more, yeah. So it's like all the dials on our addictive patterns have been and are being optimized, the algorithm, you know? It's like squeezing the essence out in more and more efficient ways across so many domains. And there's an opportunity, it's, I mean, just awful in one sense when you look at it. It's like, the enslavement of a species, the entrainment of our psychology, our emotions to these very unhealthy, unstable patterns. It's not good, but there's an opportunity there that we can kind of run through that pattern, see through that pattern, come to the end of that road, come to the end of that illusion of external gratification. There's a possibility to exhaust that seeking mechanism, that gratification, desire, craving pattern. It's an opportunity to exhaust that faster than any previous generation, to become disillusioned. There's an opportunity for disillusionment. It's like the flip side of everything I just described. It's like we're optimizing the path to disillusionment. Disillusionment, seeing through the illusion. And that's useful. That I have all these resources, all these opportunities to fulfill my desires, to avoid my pain. And I'm playing it out just in real time. And I mean, there's casualties, obviously. That's why it's so dangerous, you know. These are not trivial matters. These are very consequential things we're talking about, especially with like heavier substances. But there's a chance for breakdown and for breakthrough, to see that, the addictive patterns are not sustainable and they ultimately don't lead to peace, to fulfillment. And so the idea, the notion may dawn in one's life, in one's consciousness, in one's awareness, shit, this isn't working. It's got to be a better way. And that's about the time a meditative practice can take hold, or a spiritual teaching can enter, or grace can break through. One can wake up, as it were, out of the trance. But self-discipline in this context, then, is a way of you could say shifting those patterns, interrupting the addictive cycle. And for all the reasons I just tried to enumerate, list out, it implies a kind of breaking with convention, breaking with the consensus reality, default reality as it is here in this world. It implies a swimming upstream, going against the current. And that's the discipline of it, because our addictive patterns accrue such a momentum, externally validated, externally reinforced. So there's a great momentum behind the gratification cycle. And so discipline comes in as a movement, you could say, as an intention, as a commitment. To go in the other direction, to interrupt those patterns. And you could say, in this context, meditation might be the pattern, and might be the discipline. What's useful about meditation, not so much any particular form, style, but it's the willingness to sit in the fire, to be still, to be unmoved, to not feed the pattern, but to burn, to be still, because the patterns, the addictions rely on movement, avoidance, and meditation is, I am sitting in the fire. Things come up, these desires have, they show up in our physiology, in our psychology, in our emotional field, at all levels. They seek fulfillment. That's how they stay alive, that's how they grow, that's how they perpetuate, that's how they move. But discipline in this context is sitting with being willing to burn, to transform, be with discomfort. And that does take effort on a certain level. It does take effort, great effort, depending on where we're at in our, own patterns and addictions. And there's many different different ways of, working with addiction, and say different methods, different therapeutic approaches, different healing approaches, yoga, and whatever works for one is what works, and that's good. But I can tell you that the direct route is surrender, is burning. Yeah, and it's something that you work with, and you start to break into these patterns, and you start to heal, and you start to burn off the momentum through whatever your approach is, whatever the discipline is, whatever your commitment is. And what may have been a great effort in the beginning, or have taken a great commitment, been very difficult in the beginning. I use this analogy in the other video. It's like there's I'm not sure how to try to feel my way into this, but there is, when a rocket ship, there's this idea of breakaway speed, if I'm getting this right, if I'm using this term right. Anyways, there's this idea of, when a rocket leaves Earth, it takes a lot of fuel, a lot of energy, a lot of lift to, get this heavy object off the ground because of the Earth's gravity, because of our atmosphere. It takes a lot of fuel, but eventually, as you get far enough, I don't know if it's a certain point, at a certain altitude, a certain layer of our atmosphere. I think it probably has more to do with proximity to Earth and the gravitational pull. But at a certain point, you reach a breakaway speed where you need less fuel, less and less energy to maintain your velocity and to continue moving up. There's something akin to that in this process with discipline. It's like, because we're so out of alignment, so out of balance, so addicted, it takes this kind of effort and intentionality. But there is, at some point, because you're getting positive reinforcements as you go along. Let me pause here and break it into 2 videos.